Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. So today it is Thursday, and I have just been thinking about lots of things, and I don't know, I guess I decided to talk about it on here because I feel like I just want to go back to the good old days, man, where I just treated my podcast like my journal and I just talked, which is what I used to do. And I think over time, it became really, really structured. And today, what I want to talk about is just honestly whatever my heart takes me to. But one of the big things I do want to talk about is structure. And I just want to go. I just want to talk. And I pray that this comes out nicely and that I'm able to post it and someone benefits. But ultimately, this right now is for my heart and mind and my peace of state. Because like I always say, everything on here is like a reminder for me first before anyone. So ultimately, if you're listening to this is more of a reminder for me before you. I think I'm going to be honest about the fact that I've talked about burnout and feeling, maybe discouraged or sad or like confused. I've talked about intentions and stuff like that quite often. And I feel like a lot of the work that you do, especially when you start to do dawah, revolves around that. And I think that sometimes while you are preaching and sharing the word of what God tells you, I think that it's very normal to sometimes feel a little bit like you are on a structured loop and not feel like it is as deep to you anymore. And what I mean by that is when sometimes you're preaching, you're doing what you love it, and you have sincere intentions, and you mean it from your heart, but sometimes it just feels like you're talking, but you're not there. It just feels like sometimes you're on autopilot. And I felt like recently, I'm happy with how things are going, and I'm happy with, talking about dawah, whatnot, and I enjoy it and I love what I do, and I always try to refresh my niyat before I go on anything, right? But I did feel like for a long time it was not as heartfelt as I wished for it to be. Now, how someone produces heartfelt content is subjective. Some people genuinely feel like it's a lot more of a heartfelt conversation when they do it when they're alone at home or at night before bed. Some people feel like, their dawah and whatever they do is a lot more heartfelt when they are less frequent in it and just like they have like their moments, they take time out for it. Mine, however, my feeling of when I think I'm the best at what I do is when I don't structure it. Now, of course, that's just me. So today in particular, I think was a day that kind of opens up my eyes to that, because I preach, knowing yourself and understanding yourself, and I do take the time out to do that. But I feel like, okay, the thing about me is when I love something, when I like to do something, I obsess over it, okay? And that's it, that's my focus. And my family tells me that too, they're like, when I find my one thing, I chase it crazy and I'm obsessed over it like crazy. And so when I learned about how I kind of love to do dawah and talk about deen and stuff like that, it became a crazy, I'm obsessed 24/7 content posting, this, that, learning, sharing. And that's good. You should be sharing, you should be learning. But I feel like sometimes being obsessed too deeply and not having enough time to just kind of think about you makes it difficult. I think that you should be, working and striving your best when it comes to giving dawah. And I try my best to do that, but I also think that we need to be honest and sometimes unwind and just talk about, on intentions and how it's not easy. I see discussions that happen quite close, whether it's among my friends, whether it's in my own Discord, whether it's, on social media, of how people talk about how it's difficult now to trust, people that may have a authority or figure in regards to having lots of Islamic knowledge, because you never know who they are. And it becomes difficult because it's like, who do you learn from? If you don't know if this person is like this, or this leaks out, and it's like there's lots of questions, right? Lots of unknowns. Which is why every now and then I just make a really honest, like, raw episode where I just talk about my feelings. Because I think the problem is sometimes we act holier than thou, and sometimes we act a lot more pious and portray ourselves to have things together when we don't. And I've talked about this before. I had a whole episode where I just talked about burnout. And right now, I'm not necessarily saying I feel burnt out. I think I just feel like I feel like I've been neglecting me. And I think that is something that I do that quite often. I'm a little bit toxic about that. I'm working on it. And so I decided to just take like a couple of days off of social media, not talk to anyone, just not DM anyone, just be alone for a bit and record this and just kind of talk. I wasn't even initiating and thinking about recording an episode, but I've noticed that when I am at my most vulnerable and I'm feeling like really unstructured, I feel like that's when the episodes that I record are always the best. So I might not even post this. It just depends. It's just kind of like a talk diary. But I feel like, the perception of social media and the way that we see certain scholars and knowledgeable figures and how they're just getting at it, mashallah, may Allah make it easy for them. I think that lots of people have spiritual gifts, and I think that some people are just really good at 100% keeping it down always, and always being heartfelt in what they do, and may Allah continue to bless them with that. And then there's some people that, they struggle, they shift around, and I think that I definitely have days where I struggle and I don't talk about it with anyone, because it's just like, what do you say? You know what I'm saying? I think it's really difficult to talk about this because it's like, you don't know how to come off talking about it without sounding ungrateful. And it's never been about, not being grateful. It's always been about how thankful I am to have an audience and to have listeners and to have these things. But ultimately, of course, everything that I do is for Allah. So if someone likes my work, okay, you don't like it, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the biggest thing that I had to learn in regards to my journey of just having a podcast, doing dawah, talking, was making criticism and making praise to an extent on the same level. And this is something I'm still learning. But like, if someone criticizes me, they say, I don't like what you do, that doesn't mean I stop what I do. You know what I'm saying? And if someone praises me and says, I love what you do, I'm head over heels for you, that doesn't mean that I start doing it for them. Like, I have to make it equal and put God in the center of the reasonings of why I do what I do. And I think that Shaitan knows really how to mess with people when it comes in regards to intentions. And not even that, I think just our own selves, where we question a lot of the things that we do, even if you start off with a good niyat and a good intention and you keep it like that. I think sometimes you start to wonder, like, am I really a bad person? Am I not? Who am I doing this for? And of course, one of the biggest questions I always ask myself is, if no one saw me doing it, would I still do it? If no one praised me for it, would I still do it? If no one criticized me for it, would I still do it? And of course, yes, this is an episode that I don't even know if I'm going to post. I don't even know. And I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just for me. So I like to sit here and just kind of think about it and talk about it quite frequently. I think that one of the hardest things that I have also learned recently is that this is my habit. This is not everyone's. I think that I struggle to do self-care and self-love and, just being there for me when things are good. I think that as a whole, I think as, when you see around on just, other people's lives and environments, I think that self-care and self-love has always been associated with something that you do when things are bad, so you know how to cope. But I think that routine of letting the things go, of what makes you feel good when things are good, is kind of what throws person in a dark place sometimes, because you start to neglect yourself because your environment is good. And I think that that's something I also struggle with quite a lot. And today when I was laying there after trying to create this course, right, because I'm making like a music course on why you should not listen to music and why music is haram and whatnot, right? For my monthly classes, which is like another thing, right? Because like you also want to make sure that the information that you're providing out is good and whatnot. But after I finished doing that, I closed my computer and I went to my bed and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna lay down because my back was hurting. I was like, let me just lay down for a bit. So at this point, I left my phone in the other room, and as I lay down, I turned on the heating pad and I was like, just laying there, and I was like, oh wait, Hera, just get up and get your phone, so like you don't have to get up again. And I was like, no, why? And I was sitting there for like a solid 5 minutes just debating with myself. And I was like, oh, just go get up and get your phone. And I was like, oh, no, I'm just lazy. Like, I'm tired, right? And eventually I was just so comfortable that I was just staring at the ceiling for a long time. And I started to think, and the phone completely slipped my mind. My phone was still, not in the room. And I just started to think, and I was like, how are you? And like, that was like the first question that came to my mind. And I was like, what the hell? What am I, what? Like, I was like, what's going on? Am I talking to myself? No, like, literally, my brain, like, the first question that came to me was, how are you? And I remember that this was, like, the question that, like, if you asked me this, I would start crying. Because it was a question that I hated to answer. If someone ever said to me, hey, are you okay? I'd start crying. Like, as long as you didn't ask me, I'd be fine. But, like, if someone asked me, it does not matter where we are. If you're like, hey, are you okay? How are you? I would start crying back in the day. I've gotten better at that, though, alhamdulillah. But, I sat there and I was like, how are you? And I was like, thinking to myself, just in my brain, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. Like, I have this going on and I just finished school and like this. And then, like, I'm like, wait, no, like, why are you talking about your environment? Why are you talking about the fact that you finished school? Why are you talking about events? How are you? And I just sat there for like 5 minutes trying to think of an answer, because I realized that we associate how we feel a lot with the events and the structured things in our environment that are going to come up or that have come up. And I was like, why am I asking myself that? Like, life is great. Like, I finished school. Like when you're on summer break, you're like, life is great. Like, and I was like, today's my first day of summer vacation. Why am I asking myself these questions? Why am I sitting here on a bed, in a dark room, just sulking, staring at the wall? This is not what I expected for myself. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, get up. Like, let's do something, Like, let's start a new activity. You're the one who said you want to start new hobbies. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, but how are you? And why can you not answer that? And it was in that moment that I realized for a very, very long time I became not so connected with myself eternally and emotionally. And that was when it hit me, and I was like, crap, I did it again. And I started realizing that I was aggressively chasing and, obsessing over sharing and helping others, that I forgot about myself once again. And I think forgetting about yourself is one of those things that you could never explain to anyone else, because when sometimes you're doing habits and hobbies that you're comfortable doing, like I'm comfortable recording a podcast, I enjoy doing this. It doesn't take much of me, right? You consider it as self-care. You're kind of like, okay, I'm just winding down talking, this counts as self-care. But I think sometimes the battle between your intentions and the battle, like, of just your niyat and like, why am I doing it? And then sometimes weighing out praise, weighing out criticism. And then, like, I feel like sometimes that is what takes you to an extreme end of feeling tired. And I think that was something that I started to go through. After I was like, hey, how are you? And I just started thinking about it. I was like, I'm fine. Like, I'm good. Alhamdulillah, life is great. And I was like, so what do you have planned for yourself? And that was when it hit me, strike two, that quite often in life, a lot of our plans revolve around the structured environments that we attend and go to, like school, going through this, going through that. I have this event, I have this person coming to visit me, I'm flying out there this time, like just structured events. And I was like, what about my plans for me personally, unstructured? What are things that I've been wanting to venture out on? I have a bunch of random stuff in my life that I always wanted to try to get into. I used to be into painting a lot, and because of school, like, I just haven't had much time, but I started getting back, focusing on it. But it's like, I wanted to start finding something new, and at one point in my life, I even tried mug painting. Don't ask me why. I enjoyed it, but it was just I didn't have the right material. And I was just thinking, I'm like, you are always saying how school's consuming your time and you want to do this and you want to do that and you want this hobby and you want that. Well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. And it hit me again then that every single inch of my downtime, it's always been about let me make content, let me save content, let me post content, and it's like I love what I do and I love giving dawah and I love posting, I love talking about the deen, I love doing it. But sometimes I think that I tend to neglect myself, which is why a lot of people, I think, forget this. I think that the biggest issue that I have seen is lots of girls and just people as a whole start social media platforms talking about the deen without realizing that whether you have 50 followers or a million, your intentions need to be right. And I talk about this a lot, where I have people that tell me, oh, you inspired me to start a podcast. And, they're talking about this and that and how they're going to do this and that. And, like, when you first start something you love and something brand new, it's like every inch of your body is just so devoted to it, right? Like, you love it. And then, unfortunately, as time goes on, even if you love what you do, it sometimes gets, like, a little bit, I guess you could say, pressurizing, because you want to make sure that you're doing it right. And before anyone else judges my work, I judge my work, and I'm vicious about it. I really am. I used to never ever listen to my own podcast because I just couldn't handle it. I was like, ew. My, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I just couldn't listen to my own podcast. And then as time went on, I started to, like, re-listen to what I say, and I was like, be careful about that. I don't like that. I might just redo that. There's a lot of segments that you guys have never heard of, and I recorded, and I was like, yeah, no, that's not going out there. And so, I'm quite vicious on the way that I produce work, because I only want to put stuff out there that, I feel like might benefit people. And so I think that over time, when you take a hobby and you apply pressure on it, it kind of makes it a lot more difficult, which is something that I teach myself not to do. Now, undeniably, of course, it happens. I think that, when you are preaching the word, like, the thing is, here's the thing, like, when you're talking about the deen, you have to be careful. Like, I don't want to ever be held liable for putting out bad information, or even worse, false information, which is why I'm very, very vocal about what I can do and what I can't do. And this is something I want to talk in here too about. I think that when you talk about the deen, people put you on a pedestal that first of all, you don't deserve to be on, and you're not qualified to be on. I have people in my DMs asking me questions that scholars are debating over. And while I appreciate you coming to me and thinking that I'm knowledgeable enough to answer this, I'm not. I'm not going to sit here and act holier than thou and put myself on a skill that I'm not. I don't know the answer. You know what I'm saying? Like, if scholars that have studied from the highest universities, 10, 20 plus years, are going through these hadiths and Quran verses, and they're like, there's a little bit of, like, we're not sure what side we stand on. Some are this side, some are this side. Me, a normal 18-year-old living in Atlanta, who has not done, who's like, I'm not an alim or anything like that. It's like, it's difficult for me to give you an answer. Now, I can give you resources. I can provide you with links and stuff. So hopefully you can figure out what you think is, in regards to who you follow. But, like, ultimately, I can't tell you. And I think a lot of people don't understand this. So they get frustrated and flustered and upset and mad. And it's like, I wish people would understand that I cannot do that. Not just for my sake, but also for your sake. I don't want to be held liable for someone following something wrong for the rest of their lives. And I don't want you to be held liable for listening to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want you doing anything wrong either. So it's better for me to say, hey, I don't know, instead of me trying to act like I know. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you ask me about something that I do know, I'll tell you whatever I know. And I think another issue is, like, I feel like lots of people think that we gatekeep stuff. And it sucks because I know I personally, I don't. If you ask me, hey, how do I make a podcast? What app do you use? What RSS feed? I tell you everything. I tell you straight up. I send you voice notes. I tell you what it is as it is. Because what I do is not magical work. I do it for Allah. So if someone else wants to do it, go ahead. By all means, I'll help you. I'll teach you how to start up. Go ahead. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I think that sometimes when people are like, oh, what's the secret? How do you become successful? How do you gain followers? How do you do this? And it's like, for the sake of Allah, tell us. And it's like, I see other people going through that too on their pages where they're like, tell us the truth. How'd you actually do this? And it's like, we don't have an answer. We don't have an answer. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I tell you what I do. I tell you my tactics. I tell you, like, okay, this is how I post. This is when I post. And, like, always keep a pure niyat and pure intention. But it's like, what else can I tell you? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I think like a lot of people think that we're doing that to gatekeep our actual secrets, and there's no actual secret. It's just, you know what I'm saying? And I think like another thing is also like, try to keep your intention clean as possible. You can have 50 followers and impact, lots of people and have reward written as if you change the world, and vice versa. So like, it has a lot to do with your intention, which is why I'm talking about it. And so I think that we need to become a little bit understanding when it comes to people like podcasters and like me. Like, normal people that talk about the deen are doing this because we don't have normal people talking about the deen. That's one of the reasons also why I started. It's always really pious scholars, which mashallah may like keep them going. We should always learn, listen, and follow, what they say. But sometimes when you just want to wind down, you just want to hear like a random person, just like you talk. That's what I'm here for. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying to follow me and to follow what I say and da-da-da-da. Like, I'm here to help you when it comes in regards to lifestyle, like trying to implement the deen more. But if you ask me about fiqh and stuff like that, like, how am I, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's difficult. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. So as I was saying, I think that when you start to do something you love, you devote your whole self to it. And I feel like when I first started my journey of podcasting and, my Instagram, which I used to just make wallpapers on, I loved it. And then over time, I think like content pressure comes to you, or people are like, why are you not posting? Why are you not posting? Or like, you're like, you gotta post at least once a week on this and once a week on this and this and this and this. And it's like the thing about doing dawah online is that you also have to become really strategic about social media tactics, because you know what I'm saying? Like, you want people to hear what you gotta say. Because sometimes, unfortunately, some platforms, they just ban Muslims, period, as a whole. You post videos, dawah, ban, gone, shadow ban, community guidelines, apparently you did something. So it's like, you have to be strategic about those things. But at the same time, you need to also remember that the dawah, whoever Allah has written for it to affect, it will affect, inshallah, right? So it's like, ultimately, you also need to remember that when coming home, whoever listens to it, God has willed for them to listen to it. So don't get so caught up on becoming social media tactic hungry, which is something that I don't pay too much mind to. You know how certain people are like, oh, we'll post on this time on TikTok, and if you post this many times a day and this. In the beginning of my career, I really wanted people to know that I had a podcast, and like, I wanted people to hear about it because it wasn't getting anywhere. Getting your podcast kind of seen on Spotify is kind of difficult because no one knows your name. So it's very difficult for them to just type it in and be like, oh, let me search up, this girl's podcast. They don't know your name. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, I was really caught up in promoting it, and I actually loved it. And it wasn't like out of I guess you could say clout intent. No, like, it was out of genuine like love intent. Like, I loved what I did and I loved promoting it. And so like, I used to like see like, okay, if I do this works out, this works out. And then as time went on, I just stopped caring as a whole, because I just feel like, alhamdulillah, like, I have the people that I have, you know what I'm saying? Now, if my platform grows from here, alhamdulillah. If it doesn't, it stays steady, alhamdulillah. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the people that meant to be affected are meant to be changed. They will be changed. But I think that it's really important to pinpoint that you shouldn't become so focused on social media structures. And while it is important to, like, if you're trying to expand and grow your dawah, makes it like your lifetime thing, it is important to like know what you're doing, but like, don't make that everything. You don't want to make it like a business, you know what I'm saying? So you have to be really, really cautious. And that's what I'm saying. I feel like that's why a lot of people don't take any of this into account, which is why a lot of people, when they start doing what they do, they quit by the first or second or third, any content that they made, whether it's a YouTube video, podcast, whatnot. They're like, I just can't do it anymore. And it's like, you have to wire your brain to realize that whether the entire world sees it or whether no one sees it, I like this as a hobby. I think that it's a difficult discussion to explain when your hobby is essentially, like doing dawah and posting stuff, and you also want to see results, but you need to wire your brain into realizing that this is how I kind of changed my perspective. And I want to talk about this with you guys real quick. So hopefully this will tie in what I'm talking about earlier. What I did yesterday was, I was thinking, and I was like, okay, let's say I am, in front of an audience. Let's say I'm doing like a live. Let's say I'm on TikTok live, Instagram live, whatever, right? Let's say I'm doing something where it's live, right?
and someone really, really important comes in. Someone that can do stuff for me, someone that is popular, someone that may be well known in the Dawah community, someone that can just impact your career in a positive way. What happens? Instantly, it's not about the audience. Now it's just about impressing that person, right? Because this is like someone that you know could do something for you. Likewise, if there's someone that you really look up to and they're like watching your work, what happens? That's the only person you're thinking about. You just start communicating with that person only, right? So your brain automatically, the audience just becomes background. It's just me and this person, right? And I want you to start imagining that that most important person is not, someone that you found online or someone that is a scholar, someone that I forget that for a second. The most important eyes, the most important one that's watching is Allah. And so start to realize that while Allah already knows what you're going to say in your dawah, while He already knows what time and how and what you're going to say when you do dawah, realize that He also is watching. He's the all-seeing. So while you're sitting here preaching, also mentally think that God is also watching me do this. And I feel like that really changed my life, because then it wasn't like, oh yeah, God already knows. I'm just like, God's already seeing, so God's already like, I don't have to, like, what I'm saying? You don't think about it. But when you actually think about it and you're like, God's like He's watching. Like, just like all these people are watching, He's watching. And He's the all-seeing. He knows way more than anyone else, and He also knows what I'm about to say. So the all-seeing is also a part of watching, and all of this is going on. And I feel like that really changed my mind, because then it doesn't become about people and who compliments you. When you know that when God's vision and just God watching over you is the most valuable thing in the world, it just changes everything. So that's my thoughts on that. Anyway, I think that recently, with everything that goes on in the world, I think that it's quite difficult to express opinions that may be viewed as controversial. And like I said, this is just a wind down, just me talking about stuff. So wherever I head, right? But I think that it's really difficult for us to talk about like controversial things, because people get really mad. And I see a lot of the problems today, and I don't want to like start up a debate or anything, because these are just my opinions. You don't like them, that's fine. I just feel like a lot of the problems could be solved if people were Muslim. Now I get it. Not everyone's Muslim. You can't, impose religion on everybody. I'm not saying that. But as a Muslim, when you look at these issues and you look at how Islam has already addressed it, you're like, yeah, this was been done, talked about in Islam. This was been done, discovered, and how to figure out in Islam. So next, you know what I'm saying? And like people that are not Muslim are like fighting for their lives for like different causes or like different outcomes, when like Islam has already given those. You know what I'm saying? And like I feel like when I see stuff like that, I'm just like, every day, it makes me realize how powerful Islam is, in the sense that it's not just like worship, it's also like a whole structure in regards to finance and how you live your life and stuff like that. And I think that's beautiful. But I feel like lots of people don't recognize that. And it shows you like Islam is meant to implement in every single corner of your life, from your finances to your worship. It's meant to be implemented to our best extent. So that's my 2 cent thoughts on that. But anyway, I think that it's difficult to talk about anything controversial because people don't like what you gotta say. And I think that that's another thing that I had to really wire in my brain, that when you speak haq, don't worry if people don't like it or not. You know what I'm saying? If people don't like what you gotta say, the whole world is against you, that's fine. That's fine. But if God is by your side, you're winning. What can the world do when God is by your side? And what can the world do when God is against you? You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing with or against God. Like, God does not need anyone. God does not, you know what I'm saying? Like, God is so powerful on his own that, like, even if the whole world was to be against you, it doesn't matter. Because if you have God on your side, you're always going to win. And I think that that's one of the things that I always try to wire in my brain. I have people that dislike the things that I say, that disagree with me on certain stuff, and that's fine. That's fine. But that doesn't mean I stop what I do just because you don't like what I have to say. You know what I'm saying? I to my best extent, to whatever I can, I try to derive it from what Islam tells us and speak haq and speak truth to my best capability that God has blessed me with. But ultimately, if you disagree with me, that's you. That's fine. And I think that it's really difficult to talk about disagreements because lots of people take it to an unhealthy route. Disagreements don't have to be unhealthy. Matter of fact, I feel like when I make friends, I kind of want them to disagree with me on certain topics. I'm not saying in regards to faith. I prefer my friends to be Muslim. But let's say I keep opinion A and you keep opinion B. And this is not in regards to deen. Let's just say it's about politics or social problems, whatever, right? and you think like, okay, this is a better infrastructure, it's a better plan, I think that this is better, we disagree, that's fine, that's fine. I think that disagreements are healthy. I think that healthy disagreements build better relationships. I think that healthy disagreements build better healthy bonds, because you realize that, okay, well, this person thinks like this and I think like this, but we still love each other, we still understand each other, we still care for each other. I disagree with my best friend on quite a few things when it comes in regards to actually politics. I don't like politics, period. I disagree with US politics as a whole. That's just my 2 cents, right? um and however someone else may feel about it is their 2 cents, and we can talk about it, we can understand each other. But at the end of the day, I think healthy disagreements make better people. I think that you learn to become a lot more tolerant to the fact that not everyone has to think like you. I think lots of people grow up in a scope where every single friend that they made, every single human interaction that they made and had was similar to them. So they live in a scope that everyone's like me, everyone has to be like me, and everyone has to act like me to be with me. And this is so bad, because when you actually go out there in the real world and you realize that not everyone thinks like you, not everyone acts like you, not everyone dresses like you, not everyone even likes you, you have the biggest mental breakdown, because you're like, oh my god, like this is not like high school, this is not like this. And I know for a fact firsthand, like high schools that I've been through, schools that I've been through, lots of people just stay with people of their own scope, of their own color, of their own background, of their own financial statuses, of their own stabilities. And it's kind of sad, because it's like there's no diversity majority of the time, and it sucks. But at the same time, it's like that also happens with like popularity and whatnot. Like people don't want to hang out with people that are not popular, and they want to stay up with the people that are, because they think that hanging out with someone that's not popular makes them weird, and I don't even know. And it's just like, I feel like people that just live within their own scope with the people that act like them, dress like them, are like them, and just identical copies. It's like you don't ever get to experience life and see other people's outlooks on life, because you're too busy scooping up people that fit your scope of life. And that's the problem. Lots of people have never had diverse experiences and open-minded experiences, because they scoop up people within friend groups that are just like them, so they can be with people that are just like them, just so they can continue to act the way that they are without ever having anyone to tell them, hey, I disagree with you. I think healthy disagreements make lots of better bonds. I think healthy disagreements make people better people, because you learn to become a lot more tolerant to the fact that someone may not like what I gotta say, but I like what I gotta say. They may not like me, I like them. That's fine. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get to that ratio, middle ground. And I think that's very important. I think that lots of workforces and schools talk about, experience. You to have experience, you to be in club, you to this. I think one of the biggest experiences is disagreement. Realizing that while someone may not like me, I may not like them, we can come on common terms. Someone may disagree with me on this, I may disagree with them, but that's fine. We can still mutually talk and respect each other. But lots of people take healthy disagreements and turn them unhealthy and toxic by thinking that they are the only ones that are superior and arrogant. And I heard this beautiful quote yesterday, and it really hit my heart. And it was something among these lines. It said that sins that are done through desires are better than sins that are done through arrogance. Because when you do sins through arrogance, you are prideful about it. So your mind says, well, I don't care, because that's just how I am. That's just me. Back off. Don't tell me what to do. I don't care what you have to say. But sins that are done through desire, you did it out of that momentary desire. But now you also know that, oh crap, like I need repentance. I need to get better. Because after your desires fade, you realize where you went wrong, right? And it reminds us a lot of Adam alayhi salam and Iblis, and how Iblis did it out of arrogance. You know what I'm saying? He was like, oh, well, I don't have to vow, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that, I'm better than that. Well, Adam alayhi salam, he did it out of desire. He did it out of an impulse, quick impulse, waswasa, shaitan, whatnot. And then right when he did it, Allah taught him the words of repentance. So it's like sins that are done out of desire. Of course, we should avoid sin as a whole, but sins that are done out of desire are better than sins done out of arrogance. Because when you do it out of arrogance, you don't want to hear that you're wrong. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with arrogance, is that people that are arrogant don't actually recognize that they're arrogant, because they're like, that's just how I am. And I think that when you get comfortable saying that's just how I am without ever actually looking at how you are, you don't recognize who you are. So when people tell you something about yourself, you get really, really upset, because you're like, that's not me, but you yourself don't even know who you are, because you ultimately never took that time out, because you're so arrogant and caught up in the image of that's just me. And some people like that also turn towards narcissistic personality disorder, which is a legit thing. People act like it's not NPD. It's a legit thing. And I think that people that are really arrogant in regards to that, it's very dangerous. And may Allah protect us all from that, But it's also like, you never want to do a sin out of arrogance. That's one of the biggest things that I'm telling you will wreck you. May Allah protect us all from that, because we all mess up, right? But doing sins out of arrogance and then justifying it, it makes it very difficult for you to come to common terms to realize that it's wrong. And sometimes what happens is when you don't realize it's wrong, you don't ask repentance for it. So it just becomes a lifestyle moment. You know, there's certain people that no matter how much you tell them music's haram, they're like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Look at this. It's not haram. It's not haram. It's not haram. You'd be like, okay, well, if you think it's not haram and you let it go for the sake of Allah, don't you think you'll get a reward? No, 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 music's not haram. Okay, fine, fine. You don't think it's haram? Fine. But it's like at the end of the day, you know, you've now justified it to such an extent that you don't even realize that it's wrong. So you're not, you know what I'm saying? We can't judge who repents and who doesn't. You know, that's not our case. But like sometimes what happens is when you get so arrogant and so comfortable with it, it becomes dangerous to your ahira and to your world in this current and on. So may Allah protect us all from that. Essentially, I think that all of this is just like it really rounds back to how you deal with people. And I think that dealing with people is another thing that is just weird on its own because, again, like you disagree with people, that's fine. You know, I disagree with people about lots of different things. I think that I disagree with a lot of the way that the US works. I disagree with a lot of the way that some of the systems are here. I disagree with a lot of the ways that people choose to, I guess you could say, I don't know how to say it. Like I guess there's certain things that I don't necessarily like. You know what I'm saying? But it's like I can't sit here and pinpoint you and be like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong," because you know I keep different moral beliefs than other people do, and I think that as time goes on, like you learn to become a lot more tolerant, and I think that becoming tolerant is a very, very great thing. I think that becoming tolerant and patient is great. I think that unfortunately, lots of our society has made it seem like if you disagree with someone and you know you're an intolerant person, you have to show anger, and that is what makes you big and bad. And unfortunately, I've seen this in men more than women, where if they disagree with someone, it's you know they have to express authority and express abuse and express you know things like that to make themselves feel like you know they're on a pedestal and to be like okay you're wrong so you gotta listen to me. And I feel like that's kind of an issue that also our communities deal with, where men feel like they are not men unless they express some type of abusive authority or they express some type of verbal authority that is oppressive. There's a difference between doing it Islamically, guiding, helping, growing, and then also doing it in a manner of oppressiveness. And that causes, you know, spiritual sickness and all these other things. And I think that that is another issue that we go through with everything that's going on, because while your intentions may have not been that, we don't know, but you have to be really careful about your execution as well. There's times when you intend good things and the execution comes out bad, and then you know you apologize, you realize you fix it, fine. But like sometimes your intentions go lost and your execution comes out bad too, but you don't care enough to say that hey it was wrong because you are so arrogant in what you already have you know built of yourself. So I think that that's an issue, and I think that this, unfortunately, you know, I saw a video on this, and I think y'all can tell by now I'm just rambling. I'm just talking about what now I'm branching it off, but you know, I saw this video on TikTok, and it was really, really sad. It was really sad. It was like this video, and I guess you could say it really portrayed what, unfortunately, Desi culture does to women. I don't like it. There's certain things about it that I dislike a lot. I think that the way Islam treats women is the best, right? But it was this girl and she was in the kitchen, right? And it looked like maybe like someplace back home. It did not look like the US. And because you could just tell by the build of the house. And she was wearing her whole lenga, her whole wedding outfit. And she was literally like, this was the audio telling me. So I don't know if it was like a satire little joke thing, but it was not cool. And I mean, this is not the first time that we've seen jokes like this either. You see these happen everywhere on all platforms. And she was like low key looking like she was about to cry. And like she was being forced to like make chai and stuff. And like she just now like got married. Like from the way that she was dressed and everything, her makeup was still on, you know, she still had everything on and like, in those heavy clothes. She was like being forced to make chai. And it's like, I don't know if that video is just like satire. Cause I mean, there's lots of videos like that on the internet, you know, where they're like, showing how like what brides have to do right when they get married and stuff. I know that there's lots and lots of videos like that on YouTube and wherever, right? And it's just portrayed through media, period. How like in Desi culture, like the day the woman gets married, like get to the kitchen and start working. And I feel like this is more of an issue in forced arranged marriages, if anything. I think that arranged marriages have a lot of stigma around them that they're bad, and I don't think that arranged marriages are bad. I think that if arranged marriages are done correctly, they're amazing. I think that that is what leads you to goodness. I'm not married though, so I'm just telling my 2 cents, okay? But there's actually statistics that talked about how arranged marriages are more successful than the ones that are love bound. Because when it's love bound, it's like a lot of the stuff you've already, you know, been done through, especially when you see it outside of Islam perspective. And it's like, I heard that arranged marriages from statistics seem to become a lot more successful. Now, what we define as success is another thing. And I think that a lot of people have a lot of stigma and hatred towards arranged marriages. And I get these DMs a lot from girls. Y'all, go through my DMs. Girls crying about marriage. And I think the issue with that is that a lot of us look at the arranged marriages that our parents had and think that that's how it has to be. And that's not necessarily how it has to be. And I know that this is like random, me talking about this, but like this was a topic that lots of people always ask about. But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. I think that if you know and you're doing it the right way, the halal way, and you're putting Islam in the center of the values and not culture in the center of values, I think that you'll be fine. I think it's a good halal way to meet someone and whatnot, right? And then anytime I say this, people are like, oh, well, would you want to have that? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Like, I just don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care. Like, I'm pretty laid back about that. Like, like, what am I supposed to say? Like, I mean, of course, I think, like, ideally, it's better for you to, like, know someone and be like, okay, I like this person, cool. But, like, that's not always the case. You know what I'm saying? And I think that I get lots of DMs from girls that are like, oh, well, my parents found someone back home and they're good people, but I don't know if I want to say yes. I don't know if I want to say no. And the problem with that is no one's forcing you to say yes. No one's forcing you to say no, but you have to ultimately make a decision because you can't keep other people waiting as well either. You know what I'm saying? Like the other party, you can't just keep them waiting for 5 years because you don't know if you want to say yes or no. You have to take into account, like, does this person consider me and, my values and whatnot? Like, you have to take those things into account, right? Like for me, I hope that if I go to college, stuff figures out on its own, in the halal way. But like, if not, like, my parents back to Pakistan, they run, and that's just I'm not against it because it's like ultimately what else are you supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? So it's like you need to know whether or not this person, whether they're back home or whether they're here, aligns with your values. If they're not praying, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. No, like I don't care. I talked about this with lots of people before too. I don't care what you work as. If you're not praying, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. No, and oh no. That's it. It's simple like that. And it's like no one can change my mind on that. You need to become very, very firm on what you say yes to and what you say no to. Because that's the problem. Lots of girls and even guys don't know that. So they say yes blindly without ever taking account of how can this person be for me, and am I able to compromise on this? Am I not able to compromise on that? They don't care. They don't think about it. And the problem with that is that then you get married to someone, you treat them like crap because you're like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this about them. Well, no one said you had to deal with that if you understood yourself enough to know what you would take and what you wouldn't. Right? It's always been that easy. It's always been that easy. And I think that lots of people have stigmas around arranged marriages, and they say that it leads to gates of abuse. And I think that happens in cases. It definitely happens. But I think that, sure, if you put culture in the center, it's going to happen. For sure. Because I think that if you and your partner are not both deen oriented and aligned, I think that culture comes in the way. And I think that the way that it is stigmatized that women have to be in the kitchen, women have to do this, is so shameful. How are you a woman and you don't know how to do this? And you're referring to all how women should be like this and women should be doing this and this, but I'm not talking to you about how the Prophet, peace be upon him, literally did his own laundry, knew how to cook and handle his own stuff on his own. We don't say that, right? That's because we don't put Islam in the center. We like to make it culture. Culturally, women should know how to cook. I'm Pakistani. I'm telling you, if you don't know how to cook, if you're a girl and you don't know how to cook, the aunties jump you. It's the end for you. Now, I know how to cook because I like doing it. I like doing it out of like passion, right? Like I like to cook, right? It's something I enjoy doing. But, if you don't know how to cook, it's like you get jumped. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, people bring that up. People talk about that and da-da-da. And I think cooking is a good life skill that you should have for yourself. Man and woman. I don't know why we've addressed cooking to just women. Cooking is really therapeutic, okay? You need to learn how to cook. It's therapeutic. But if we're talking culturally, people have stigmatized it, right? And it's like people like to be like, oh, she doesn't know how to cook, so she's like the worst person in the world. And it's like it's weird. I don't know. I just find a lot of the cultural standards weird, and I think that they've made it seem like the only thing a man has to do is bring money when there's a lot more towards that. And I think that some men also think that even after they have families, all they have to do is contribute money. You play roles before you're a money machine, so like I feel like people don't think about that enough. And so as I was saying, I think like with arranged marriages, I think the gates of abuse open up a lot when you put culture in the center, because if you're talking culturally, this is my opinion, I don't think that cultural standards can ever be fulfilled, especially not Pakistani cultural standards. Change my mind. Fight with me. Fight with a wall. You can't change my mind. I think that the cultural standards for Pakistanis are just so difficult that you will never be able to achieve them and you'll never be able to change them, which is why I don't like to address myself with them and I don't like to care enough for them. Because at the end of the day, if I follow what Islam tells me, got God by my side, the whole world's against me, that's fine. But like, I think that Pakistani standards culturally are so severe that our mothers and all just generations before us, when they went through it, they knew how bad it was. And I think that at one point, everyone becomes numb to it. So they pass it on. And it's kind of like generational trauma where lots of, even if you're not Pakistani, like they go through a lot of crap. And then, at one point, they become numb towards it and they don't give a crap anymore. And so they put that on their kids because they don't realize it. And now, alhamdulillah, my mom has never done that to me. You know what I'm saying? Like my parents, alhamdulillah, right? But like I see it happen in lots of other households as well. And it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to look at what Islam tells you in regards to culture. And I think that Pakistani standards in regards to culture are toxic, are disgusting. And I think that we also have to talk about the fact that, certain men, they only, okay, where am I going off on this? I'm going on a tangent. There's a lot of things that I disagree with about Pakistani culture. I'm sorry. And I think that we don't talk about it because we don't want to get criticized. And I mean, I've seen the end of the share of, judgment. But like at this point, I've said too much to not say. You know what I'm saying? I think that the way that men in Pakistan, especially, I've noticed, do this thing where they're like, oh, well, I only want to marry the youngest of young women, even if she doesn't mentally, morally, physically, like, in no way, shape, or form is she, like, compatible to me. I just want to marry the youngest of the youngest. And that is so, ugh, ugh, gross. My opinion, gross. Ugh. Because look. In Islam, you need to be getting married for quite a few different reasons, right? But one of them also being that you mentally and emotionally feel like this person's compatible to you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just about lustful reasons, right? And when men want to marry women that are literally like 12, and it's like you're 32, and you have girls that are like 25, 24, 22 that are interested in you, 26 that are interested in you, and you're like, oh, I don't want anyone in their 20s. Too old, too old. Brother, you're 32. You're 32, brother. That's so. Do you hear the silence? And you know what? It's like, it's not even about shut 'em, dude. It's just like, it's just like, you have to look at the emotional and mental capacity of this individual. Homegirl's 12. You have no emotional and mental capacity relation with her. You're 32. You're a grown man. You have a job. You've seen the life. She's 12. She's 12. And then, people, again, and I want to bring this up here, people like to bring about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Aisha, may be pleased with her. There's no issue in that. There's none, because back in the day, the whole lifespan, the whole trajectory, the whole thing about when women hit puberty and just everything like that was different. That was completely different. That time and today's time are completely different things, not to mention, y'all act like there wasn't consent in that. There was. There was consent. It was perfectly okay. And Aisha, may be pleased with her, was, from what we see, very happy with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So it's like, at the end of the day, emotional, mental capacity, all those things are taken into account. Also, back in the day, girls that grew up in deserts, grew up in harder times, were just a lot more mature and wiser than what it is today. A 12-year-old today is still playing, like, on her iPad, like Subway Surfers or something. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, you can't justify, and I feel like that's what sucks, because culturally, they nitpick and bring stuff out whenever they want to. Whenever men that are like 50 want to marry a girl that's like 12, they're like, oh, well, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Aisha, Leslie Pleasure got married at such a big age gap. You're not realizing the stuff back then was completely different. That time and today's time are completely different times. So don't try to justify, getting married to someone for lustful reasons. And a lot of the times I've noticed it is for lustful reasons. And what I'm talking about right now is about lustful reasons. When people like to justify and sugarcoat it, but all they care about is lustful reasons. And it's like, you cannot bring up whatever you want whenever you want just to justify your lust. You know what I'm saying? Because mental emotional capacity is a really big discussion. And of course, Allah knows best. Allah knows best. And what I'm essentially trying to say here is, you can't sit here and, do this type of stuff just because you have lustful reasons. It's like, you're a grown dude, bro. Get it together. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I have a whole episode on this where I talk about culture, right? And I think, like, in Pakistani culture, I feel like they're like, oh, well, it's an older guy, so that's good. And it's like, there's a difference, right? Like 4, 5, 6, maybe even 10 years. Maybe. But it's like, okay. But if it's like 25, 30 years, it's like, what do you want me to say? Like, it's just like, I question it a lot, because it's like, it just cannot be a mental emotional capacity thing. I mean, Allah knows best, right? Allah knows best. Maybe that is the case for some people. I don't know. But like a mental emotional capacity thing, maybe that's the case for some people. I don't know. But majority of the time it ain't. Because let's be honest, if a girl's 12, what mental emotional capacity depth does she really have? Except the stuff that she's seen in her environment. You know? It's weird. And that's why I think like Pakistani culture and just their expectations are baffling because they're willing to sacrifice women like a goat. Say it as it is. Pakistani culture is willing to sacrifice women like bakra. It's Eid. They're willing to do that. And it's like, why are you doing that? Do you not know how much Islam values women? Why are you doing crap like that? And it's like they will sacrifice their daughters, sacrifice all of that in the name of some meher and whatnot, and then be like, oh, got her married to a good place. Dude, she's crying her eyes out every night. What are you talking about? I don't know. And I think that, like, that's why a lot of people are also against arranged marriages because they think all arranged marriages are like that. No. If you and the person have a proper mental, emotional, physical capacity, understand each other, good, stable lifestyle, whatnot, and it's not like about lustful reasons, like, yeah, fine. You meet someone the halal way, your parents do the talking, your parents do the digging. You don't got no business in that. I don't see an issue with that. I don't. I don't. But when we're talking about extreme ends spectrum like that are so cultural, it's like, no. Mm-mm. And another part of the spectrum is like, I think cultural wise, especially for Pakistanis, like as girls, they just don't want you to care about yourself, which is something that I've noticed a lot. They don't want you to care about yourself at all, period. There's a different thing between being like super narcissistic and arrogant, obsessed with yourself, and like doing basic self-care, like kind of like, oh, hey, let me just get to bed on time, let me just make sure that I can get a couple more hours of sleep in. Maybe I feel tired. Maybe I don't feel good today, so let me just stay in bed. Like, no, get up, go to the kitchen. What are you doing? What do you mean? What do you mean you don't feel good? What do you mean you don't feel good? Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like all these things, and I think about them, and it's just like, no. And another problem is living with the in-laws. Let's talk about that too, because that was a question that I had. In one of my discussions, people are like, oh, what's your 2 cents about living in your in-laws and whatnot? I think that what happens is Pakistani culture, they're really like, oh, you have to live with your in-laws. You have to live with them. You have to live with them. Not realizing that that's more of a cultural thing, if anything. And like the thing is about that, it's like if your parents are old and you want to take care of them, stay with them. It's a good, healthy environment. Sure, no problem. And stuff like that. But I think that lots of people think that Islam bounds you to that. Like you have to live with your in-laws, and that's not true. Because there's lots of cases where they lived separately, they lived away, they lived near their parents, visited their parents, but they lived away. That's fine too. But like if you have like old parents and you want to stay with them and they're good people, like it's like not going to be something that really affects you. You want to take care of them, okay, whatever, no issue. But like you also have to ultimately realize that like culture makes women that don't want to live with their in-laws look like monsters. We're not monsters for not wanting to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like there are certain cases where the in-law drama, do we even have to talk about it? The in-law drama is psycho sometimes. The stuff that goes on, the manipulation, the lies, the stories, the gaslighting is crazy. So sometimes girls just don't want to get into that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, like if it's a healthy, good, positive environment, okay, cool, whatever, right? But right now I'm talking about the toxic part. And if it's toxic, it's like, and a girl doesn't want to live into that, y'all literally will beat her to death. How dare you say you don't want to live with my mom that gaslights and manipulates, hits, and forces you to work in the kitchen for 10 hours straight? How dare you? How dare you say that? What? What? Like, is this what? Like, your wife is your partner, not your slave. It's not your slave. She does not have to stick here and deal with situations that will weaken her iman and deal with, getting abused and whatnot and not have no time to take care of herself. Like, what's going on? What's going on? And it's like culture will make you seem like a monster if you say, no, thank you. I'm not okay with that. I mean, it ain't no bad either. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that there are some aspects of, Pakistani culture that's great. Like the way that I hope majority of people, I hope that this is the case in all families, are really, really giving. You give a lot. You are always giving food. You make food, you give it to other people. I find that to be really beautiful. And the reason why is because I feel like I know this in Pakistan. Like I remember when I visited Pakistan. So anytime I visit Pakistan, I usually stay in Sialkot, right? Because that's where most of my family is, and then my dad's side is from Lahore, right? So I actually have never been to like, okay, when I visit Lahore, like people are like, oh, Lahore is great, like they go places and stuff. Like I've never really, I went to the mall. I went to the mall. I think I went to like some zoo area. I don't know, but that's it. Like I've never been to Lahore. Like you know, people like visit and go around. Like I've never done that. Um, I stay in Sialkot most of the time, and I love it. I love that place. I know some people may hate it. Maybe like that's too much going on there, but I like it. Okay, I like it. So I usually stay in Sialkot, right? So like even when I was there, I remember one time I went around winter season and like they were just giving cakes, no reason. They're like just, I was at my grandparents' house, like just ring the bell, hey, here's a cake. And like like you know what I'm saying? Like or like, hey, here's food. And it's like they just kind of do that. Like that's just kind of something that you do. And so like if your neighbors give you cake, you get them cake and give them cake and like you get cake and then you give them cake and then you give the next person cake and it's just like it's cute. Like I like that. And I think one of the things that I really noticed is like, if, your family is like that and they're good people, inshallah, like the hospitality in like a good way, it's really nice, like the way that they treat you and they care for you and whatnot is really good. um but I think that's one of the things that I really do love about Desi culture period is like the way that we're really really giving, especially when it comes to feeding people. Inshallah, may Allah accept it from us. I find that beautiful. I think it's really nice to be very very open, and I like that. I feel like after I moved to the US, I remember when I first lived in Brooklyn, New York, I lived in like a building, and that's a whole other story. I think actually I might just share that story today because it's a dark one. It's not necessarily dark. It's just I feel like there was a lot of tea. Like I think that lots of people view people's parents who've kind of gotten out of places as privileged and think that they're over their head, and that's definitely not the case. But I remember when I lived there, it wasn't. I was really little, so I didn't know much. But it was like a two-bedroom place, and there was five of us, I think, and it was like my younger brother was little at the time, so like he just slept with my parents, and then me and my sister slept together, and it was the thing about New York that I really just like, let's just talk about it for a second. Maturing is realizing that New York is mad dangerous. It is. And like I've been knew that growing up, New York's dangerous. But like now when I see what's also going on there in the news and just on TikTok period, like New York is not a good place to stay. Don't change, you can't change my mind. I love New York. I love the way that you can just walk places. I love the culture. I love the food. If there was anyone that was an advocate for the gyro stand, it was me. I told my friend, I'm like, if I ever visit New York, like you need to have the gyro on standby for me. Cause like I love all those things and I love that place. It's a great place to visit. It's not a good place to stay. And maturing is realizing that. A lot of people don't like to accept that. They're like, oh, well, what do you want to do? Live in the South, live with trees, live with woods. What you're not understanding is that you have to live in a home at one point or another before you talk about living outside. You get my point? Whether you live in a house, an apartment, a complex, whatever, where you live has a lot to do with your mental, emotional health. And while the outside culture is great, you also have to take care of where you are at home with your family. Just all those concepts make a change. And one of the big things about New York that I remember growing up, like if you live in New York, and I'm talking about real people that live in New York know this. And if you're getting grossed out by what I'm about to say right now, I'm sorry, but you're just not well aware of the New York culture. I'm sorry. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I moved a while ago. Um, Bed bugs are really common there. Okay? Let's get straight to the jump. Bed bugs are really common there. And if you are a real New Yorker, you know that. Like the bed bugs, very common. And it has nothing to do with being unclean. Nothing. It's just the way that the infrastructure of those buildings and the way that you stay in, just stuff like that. Like it was really common. And getting rid of bed bugs, there's impossible, very difficult. You can put as many bedbug sprays, you can have professionals come, you can have powders, just everything. Like, and we had all of that. They just don't go. And I remember one time in kindergarten, no, not kindergarten, I think it was second grade. What happened was, in particular, was in school. You know how when it used to be winter season, when it's cold in New York, it's like cold, 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 right? And so it's like you're wearing those big puffy jackets. They used to make us take our big puffy jackets and like put them in like bags, so like if anyone did have bed bugs on it, it wouldn't affect other people. But a lot of times, just hanging up your jackets in a communal area, like things slipped. And it's not even that people were unclean. It's just that's just how New York is. Like you sit on a chair, you don't even know that there could be like a bed bug living under it, and it's disgusting. I mean, I'm honest, it's gross, but that's how it is there. Mouses, stuff like that. Like it's a lot of the problems came from the building infrastructure because they were so old that no matter what you did, like to fix those things, you got to break them down, and like that just wasn't an option with thousands of people living in them. And it was just like there was issues with that, right? And I mean, I'm not trying to sound privileged or anything like that because I get that, and I lived in those places for a very very long time. It's a common issue. But It was my family, and we lived in 2 bedrooms, and the kitchen was small. And it was just like growing up, like I never really noticed it. You know what I'm saying? Like it was okay, like whatever. And then we eventually, alhamdulillah, don't live there anymore. But it was like one of those things that like even within the building, no matter what your circumstances was, we were giving. Like people were giving. And I remember when my mom first moved in, she was an immigrant, and she came from Pakistan, and she was like, she she was like, what am I supposed to do here? Like I'm in a building. And I remember like a bunch of the aunties who just knocked on the door like, hey, we got food, come on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that was like one of those things there that I feel like in Pakistani culture, like you kind of bond over giving each other biryani. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, knock on your door, here's some plow, and like, that's just how you become friends. And so it's like I like that, and I like the way that that was, because I remember like especially like when it was Eid or just Jummah, just you don't need a day. Like people just knock on your door, hey, here's some biryani, you want to come over, drink chai. Like it was just like that. And I like that a lot about how these sea cultures are like when it comes in regards to that, because after moving here, living alone, it's not really like that at all. By far, even if you do have Pakistani Desi community around you, it's not like that at all. And so they don't really care that much. It's just not as, I guess you could say, loving as it is in New York. New York is a whole other experience, because it's like everyone there's like immigrants, everyone there's from somewhere, but whether you're brand new, like you just now came, or you've been there for the past 25 years, it's like you resonate with people in their own way. And that I find that always beautiful and amazing. So, here, however, it's not necessarily 100% like that. And so when I do have people like, aunties that come to my house and be like, hey, how are you? Here's some food. Like if I was little, me would not care. I'd be like, okay, cool, whatever. Anyway, let's go get some M&Ms. Like I wouldn't care. I'd be like, let's go get some candy. You know what I'm saying? But like older me, now that when I see people do that, I feel like it really sits in my brain. I'm like, that's kind of nice, because it's like in southern areas and like just living where it's really not lots of immigrants, I feel like people who take the time out to do stuff like that, it's very sweet. And I think that's one thing that I don't ever want my family to stop doing, and I don't want other people to stop doing. I know if I was to ever grow up and like have my own house and like I was a mom, and you know what I'm saying, like if I was ever like an adult, and I find that funny to say because I'm literally 18, but like I know that's one thing that I always want to do, like give food, like just randomly drive to someone's house, be like, hey, here's some food. Like I feel like it's deep. I feel like it says a lot, although people think it doesn't. I think that it's, especially where we live here, it's just not common at all. So I think that that was one of those things that like if you're in New York, like you get it. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of those things that really stick in my mind quite often. And yeah, I think that's one of those things that I find really amazing. But that's what I'm saying. Like it's not all bad. You know what I'm saying? Like the culture's not all bad. The culture's not all horrible as people try to make it seem. And I'm not trying to make it seem like it's bad either. I just think that when it comes to the family dynamic, Pakistani culture has some issues with the roles and the expectations and stuff that you put on one person more than the other and whatnot, or whatnot, and the ignorance towards some things. And that's why I just think that putting Islam in the center of it always fixes everything, if God wills. So yeah, I'm sorry if that sounded like I was just insulting my own culture. That's definitely not the case. I'm definitely not okay with the toxic traditions, though. I think I actually wrote a paper on toxic traditions. I wrote a paper on toxic traditions for one of my classes, where all of us know it's toxic, but we don't stop it because it's a tradition. And to stop a toxic tradition, there's a lot of backlash that you face. So to like actually actively stop it, you go through a lot of backlash because you're stopping something toxic, and you receive toxic backlash for stopping something toxic while it makes sense to stop it. You get what I'm saying? Like everyone inside worldwide agrees that crap, this is wrong, let's not do this. They know it's wrong. But mentally they're also not ready to stop it because they know what a big war it takes to stop it, and it doesn't logically make sense because they're tired of it emotionally, but they don't want to do anything about it when someone does something about it, which is like, yeah, that's quite a lot of things among lots of cultures where hey, that's wrong, we should all fix that. I don't know if I want to fix that, just shut up, bear it through. And it's like, I pray God protects us all from those situations. I mean, because it's terrifying. And inshallah, Allah makes it right. Anyway, does anyone want a cameo for my cat? Because we can do that right now. Say something. Say something. Meow or something, please. Come here. Do meow, please. Hey, don't try to bite me, but the maze. What is this behavior? You know it's serious when the Urdu comes out. It is. Seriously. It's very serious when the Urdu comes out. Y'all hear him? Purring and whatnot? Okay, good. Good. You know, it's one thing that I always find weird is the fact that I look at my statistics, right? And like, I know that I have Pakistani people listening to me that live in like the US, UK, or Canada because like they've told me. But like, when it comes to actually Pakistan itself, my analytics show me that no one really there listens except like maybe even 1%, not even. And I know that there's like maybe one or two people in Pakistan that do listen to me because they've told me personally, but like my statistic wise doesn't show me that people listen to me there, and I don't know why. I had one person once ask me like, "Hey, I live in Pakistan. How can I get access to your podcast?" And I was like, "It's on Spotify." Like, what? They're like, "No, like podcasts are some podcasts apparently are banned, or podcasts as a whole are banned." I don't know. I don't know how that works, but I don't know why. Why do they do that? Because I mean, like, not all podcasts are bad anyway. But like, I don't know. Maybe it's just something to do with the media. I don't know. But I honestly feel like Pakistani aunties would not like my podcast anyway, um, because I talk about toxic traditions that they want to break, but they don't break, and they force their daughters to go through them. Um, yeah, I don't think Pakistani aunties would like my work. I really don't. लगता है वो गालियां देंगे लेकिन अल्लाह ना करे, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Allah na kare, but I know, like, alhamdulillah, my parents were fine with it. You know, they were supportive. But like, I remember when I told my mom about my podcast, I told her late. I was not ready to tell anyone of my family. I barely told my own close friends in the beginning. I like acted like an anonymous account, and they were like, "Who's this? Who's this?" Right? But barely told them. And when I told my mom, she was really nice about it, alhamdulillah, which was good because I know that in some cases, like, girls have to hide their socials because, you know, like, family back home and just everyone starts getting on ruckus about it. And I feel like if someone's talking about the deen, why are you upset? You know, like, I know that there's cases where, like, girls are talking about the deen, their family back home's getting pissed off. Why are you talking about that? Why are you saying that? Da da da. You know, like, delete your stuff. And it's just like, if someone's talking about the deen, what's your problem? You know what I'm saying? I mean, alhamdulillah, went smooth. When I told my mom I had a podcast, it was like gradually people found out too. And I remember the day, you know, people at home found out in Pakistan, and alhamdulillah, it went smooth. It went smooth. You know, I have lots of my family that actually follows me. So I'm 1,000% grateful for that experience. And the reason why I'm sharing that on here is like so people can be a little bit more brave, especially my girls. Like, if you want to do dawah, don't be scared of what people back home gotta say. You know what I'm saying? Like, lots of people are going to criticize you for your dawah and be like, oh, you know, don't talk, stay silent, stay in a home, cook, don't let me hear your voice, and stuff like that. And it's just like, Islam, no. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to do dawah, you want to help, go ahead. And don't be so scared of what people gotta say. You know what I'm saying? I knew that, like, when getting into what I get into, I knew that some Pakistani communities, like, if the aunties had Spotify, the aunties had Google Podcast, the aunties would eat me. Okay? Done, gone. Maybe some of them might be supportive. I think that some of them would be supportive, but I think that the ones that are a little bit really consumed in toxic traditions would be like, someone come get their daughter because she got problems. But like, at the same time, like, you have to ask yourself, why are you having such a big problem with someone talking about dawah and talking about toxic traditions and cultures that you personally suffered with and are depressed of? So many aunties that are in their 40s, 50s, 30s are depressed and are sad because of what happened and how their in-laws are treating them and how they're going through this and how they always have to be working and how they have this societal expectation, this culture, and they're being forced to do this and that. And it's like, when someone's advocating and speaking up for you guys, you have a problem. And we have to talk about that real quick because I don't get why so many people, especially Pakistani aunties, go through such horrible crap and they become really bitter, which is sad. May Allah, you know, make it easy. And then when you see young people speaking up about that, you're like, chup kar jao. Like, why, pipe down? Why are you talking? And it's like, woman, I'm speaking for you. What's wrong? Like, and I don't get that because they're like, I don't get that. I just don't get that. They're not supporting of it at all. But some people, alhamdulillah, were supportive of it. Majority of all the people that I've met personally that were supportive of it. You know, I remember one of my mom's auntie's friends was like, "Oh, I love it." You know, I don't know if she ever heard me talk, but she was really sweet about it. Which makes me happy. But like back home when people found out, it was fine. Like, it went smooth, alhamdulillah. You know, like, they follow my Instagram, they like my stuff, and it's like, I think that is important to know that you have people like that in your family that are supportive of what you do, because you also, you know, have to share your work with like-minded people, and it's possible that, like, no one will like the fact that you're talking about Islam and the deen, you know, because, like, there's certain cultures that just want you to shut up and stay silent and never show your face and just never speak and never breathe and just, you know. And I also think you have to ask yourself, why do you think that culturally? Why do you feel like you have to be so, oppressive in the manner of not even letting women breathe? um, why do you feel that when Islam doesn't feel that? I feel like that's another thing too. And I also feel like the problem with among cultures, and this isn't just Pakistan, it's just a lot of places where like when women are born, they're really disappointed about that, which is another thing that is so heartbreaking. Like the Prophet, peace be upon him, there's hadiths where like, like if you have daughters, they can be the route to Jannah, inshallah, and how like Jannah lies under a mother's feet, and just so many great things like that. About how you should take care of the women, take care of mothers, whatnot. And it's like people, when women are born, they're like, Perse again, are you serious? And then they're like, don't even like congratulate the mother who had the child, and they cause all these issues, they cause all this drama, no respect, no congratulations, no matai, no nothing. And it's like, what? And it's like, I don't get that, because it's like, why are you so bitter about someone else having a daughter? And then sometimes what happens is culture makes women think that it's the worst thing to have a daughter, and they become so bitter towards it that the mom herself starts to see their daughter and be bitter towards them, which is so sad. And it happens a lot more often than we think. And I think this whole stigma of, only having a boy is what makes you successful is really bad, because the deen is not just about, gender. It's about worshiping Allah alone. And if you look at the mothers of the believers, may Allah be pleased with them, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they have narrated hadiths, they've done great things. There are, mashallah, may Allah be pleased with them. So it's like, what's your bitterness towards women? I just feel like a lot of cultures think that women are useless, period, no need for them, which is heartbreaking. And I also know situations where like, this is really sad, but I also know situations where like where women were pregnant, and if they had like their second or third daughter, the husband would just remarry. And it's like, man, why you gotta be like that? Ugh. Ew. Like, why you gotta be like that? And it's so sad. It's so sad, because it's actually and actively a thing. And they still do it. Or they'll like remarry if someone has like a daughter. Like, oh, you can't give me a son. Bye. Like, I feel like people don't think about the qadr behind that. Like, there is such great decree behind having children, not having children, having a daughter, not having a daughter, having a son, not having a son. And I feel like people just mentally think that if you have a son, you are successful. You have a son, you have success in your deen, and Allah has done a big, rahmah on you, and Allah favors you, and Allah this, and like, and it's like, having children, not having children, whatnot, it's all Allah's decree. But people make it seem like women that have sons are a lot more pious because Allah granted them that. And I'm like, what? Where are y'all getting this flawed logic from? Because like, you don't know if that same son could be the reason you get tested. Children, it's difficult being parents. And I'm not a parent, I'm just telling you. I still drink apple juice, okay? I'm a child. But like, anything in this life could be a test and a blessing at the same time. And I think that it's so strange to me how in cultures they'll be like, oh, so she had a son, so she's successful. And they will genuinely treat women better too if they have sons. And it's like, what? That's so, ew, gross, toxic culture. And it's like, why you gotta be like that? I don't get that. And I feel like the whole concept where like, oh, I'm just gonna remarry, like, since you can't give me a son. It's just like, I feel like people forget about what Islam says in that moment, and how like Islam values women and daughters and stuff like that so much. And it's like, you are being hateful and bitter and not wanting to take care of your daughter, not wanting to take care of their upbringing and raising, and you just hate them because they're a daughter. And it's like, what's their fault? And I think that's why so many daughters, grow up thinking that they're a mistake because their parents made them think that they're a mistake, and you're not a mistake. I don't think that anyone's ever born by mistake. I think that Allah knows exactly what He's doing, when He's doing it, how He's doing it, what the layout's going to be. You're not a mistake. And I think that it's sad that our culture makes it seem like the daughter's a mistake, and they're like, oh my god, oops, how'd that happen? Oops, you had a daughter? Oops, may Allah give you son next time. And I'm like, whoa. And like, there's cases where like, they have daughters, and like to congratulate them, they come to the hospital and they're like, Allah, next time, better karega, may He grant you a son. What do you mean Allah will make it better next time? What's this? Like, and it's just like, I feel like that type of disrespect is beyond me, and it's disgusting, if anything, because how can you hate Allah's creation like that? How can you hate the fact that someone birthed a daughter and it wasn't in their control, and da-da-da-da? Like, how can you hate someone for that crap? How can you hate the child? The innocent child. This child can literally become, one of the most best alimas there could be the one that helps, in lots of great causes, could be so successful, could be more successful to you than a son, but you don't care because it's a daughter. And I think that the daughter depression, the daughter stigma makes lots of daughters grow up and also view themselves very poorly because they were treated poorly because they were simply a daughter. And so they grow up thinking that they're incapable of doing lots of things and that they don't even deserve to be breathing. And it's like, that's not the case. That's not the case. And and another sad thing is, like, sometimes when women do have sons, in these households where they had lots of daughters, when they do have sons, it's completely different. The matai, the environment, the party, the throw, the baby shower, the clothes, it's like everything's different. And only for that son to grow up, and sometimes, since they praise the son for being a son so much, which is another problem in community culture, not community, desi culture, where, like, if they have a son, they don't tell him to do anything. They don't raise him on Islamic moral grounds. They don't raise him on Islamic values. They don't raise him on anything. They don't tell him, hey, you gotta pray. They don't tell him, hey, you gotta do, like, good in school. Like, they're just like, oh, son, let's just admire him. He's a boy. It's a son. Let's just admire him. And they don't care to actually, like, raise their sons properly. And this is so bad, because what happens is, as they grow up and they don't learn about the deen or Islam or any really good moral values, they grow up to becoming, very vicious and completely out of those things. And so when their son does turn their back on their parents are like, how could you do this? We raised you for so long. We took so much care of you. We spoiled you. Well, that's the thing. You never taught him how to take care of you. When you teach your sons and your daughters about Islam and how they make you value parents and how you're supposed to treat your parents and how you're supposed to handle yourself and how you're supposed to be praying, how you're supposed to be worshiping, if God wills, inshallah, that person will grow up with such a good character. But if you are praising your son just because he's a son and, oh my God, I had a son, like, that's the best thing in the world, then your son grows up with absolutely no moral values and no concept of the deen. How is he going to know how to respect you? You never taught him. You just praised him for simply existing. You praised him for simply breathing. You praised him for simply tucking in his chair. You praised him for simply, maybe picking up his plate. That's basic human decency. A 5-year-old can do those things. And I think that's the problem. And that roots a lot from the toxic traditions, and I think, if anything, also trauma and stigma of when women don't have sons. So when they do have sons, they feel like they've accounted value to something to finally deserve to live because they had a son. And so they just raise their sons with the most uttermost, spoiling effects, which, okay, whatever. But, like, if you don't teach him anything in regards to the deen and the values, and you're just like, just go do whatever you want, go breathe, you want to play on the video game all day, go ahead. Like, it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it really beneficial then? You know what I'm saying? Like, and may Allah guide those people back, but it's not fair. And you can't do that to yourself either. And then, like, their sons abandon them. Sometimes that happens too, or, like, their sons just move out of the country to, like, bye, mom, I don't care about you no more. And they disrespect them, they don't care about them. And then that's when their parents realize about their daughters, and they're like, oh my God, I love my daughters. And it's like, your daughters already grew up with so much trauma of you not wanting them. Now that you realize that the son necessarily did not care about you, now you want to come back. It's just, there's a lot of things about this, and I feel like I can make a whole episode about it. I don't know. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this wind down. I feel like it was really therapeutic for me to just talk about random stuff without any direction and structure. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I mean, if you did, please let me know, because I'll appreciate it immensely. But yeah, always remember to be very, very careful about yourself, how you ground yourself, about your passions and your hobbies, and do it out of love. Try to not do it out of compulsion. Do it out of, I want to do this for Allah, not for the people. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. May Allah forgive me if I said anything wrong. May Allah forgive me if I pissed off any aunties. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum.